Why does Portuguese sound like Russian or Polish or Slavic in general? I have no idea. I mean, to me, I don't know. It might be perhaps because I've been learning Portuguese for quite some time already. So to me, it sounds like Portuguese. That's it. And yeah, but many people seems to think that, especially non-Portuguese speaker from other countries in Europe that I've never heard how it's spoken, because probably the more mainstream Portuguese is the Brazilian one. So perhaps when they first listen the European Portuguese being spoken, they think that it sounds a little bit Slavic. So today we're gonna check out a video by LangFocus that is going to explain us why this is. So yeah, let's check it out right away. We have subtitles, I think. Yeah, Portuguese Brazil. I mean, it's the same language. You guys are making so much fuss, but yeah, it's the same language. It's still Portuguese. Come on.
Hello everyone, welcome to the LangFocus channel, and my name is Paul. Today's topic is, why does Portuguese sound like Russian? Oh, be quiet. So why am I even asking that question? Well, a lot of people hear Portuguese, and it's usually the Portuguese spoken in Portugal rather than Brazil or elsewhere, and they think it sounds Russian or Slavic, Russian being a Slavic language, of course.
I feel it's like the bzz, 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 bzz sounds, like the bzz sounds, like what you said, like ele, eu falo português, the consonant sounds. I mean, oh my god, I suck at explanations, but I think it's the consonant sounds, right? And the vowels being shortened sounds more Slavic. But I'm not sure that it's actually true, you know?
Most of the people who say this are people who don't speak either language, but just think that something about Portuguese sounds Russian without really being able to describe why. Now, I'm sure that a lot of Portuguese speakers and Russian speakers will say that that's ridiculous. They sound nothing alike. But I've even heard native speakers of Russian say that they think Portuguese sounds Russian. And I've heard native speakers of Polish as well say that they think Portuguese sounds like Polish. Let me be clear that
is it one of those things like Greek that sounds like Spanish from Spain, right? I guess it could be like that.
They are not saying that Portuguese is mutually intelligible with Russian or with any other Slavic language. It's not at all. What they do say is that if they hear Portuguese being spoken at a distance, but they aren't close enough to hear what's being said, or if they're not really paying attention to what's being said, then they think it sounds like Russian.
That's exactly what I feel with Greek and Spanish. I feel like, because I can speak Spanish, so whenever I hear Greek people speaking, I say like, oh, they're speaking Spanish, but I can't understand anything. Then I start to listen to it, and then I hear Ellenika. That's pretty much one of the few words that I know in Greek. So I say, oh, okay, that's Greek. But it always gives you that thing, but you're not too focused on something. Yeah, okay, let's...
Polish. And I've heard the same thing in reverse from European speakers of Portuguese. If they hear Russian or another Slavic language from a distance, they might think that it sounds like Portuguese. So how can that...
Especially when you travel, that
happen? Well, it's because of some similar elements in their phonology. Stress-timed languages. One important similarity between Portuguese and Russian is that both of them are stress-timed languages. In a stress-timed language, the length of time between stressed syllables remains relatively consistent, and in order to fit into that fixed time interval, unstressed syllables become compressed and shortened. This results in a lot of vowel reduction. European Portuguese contains quite an extreme amount of vowel reduction. For example,
tenho fome.
This means I'm hungry. You can see that the sound O is reduced to U or a schwa, and the E sound is reduced.
Tenho fome.
Another example.
Importante.
Again, the O is reduced, and A is reduced to E, or basically disappears.
Importante.
And there's similarly a lot of vowel reduction in Russian. For example,
облако.
This word means cloud. The A is reduced to a schwa, and O is also reduced to a schwa.
Облако.
That's so cool.
Another example.
Sapori.
Сапоги.
Sapagi.
Word means boots. You probably noticed the reduction in these two vowels right here.
Сапоги.
Russian and other Slavic
Sapagi.
languages also have a lot of consonant clusters, and because of the heavy vowel reduction in European Portuguese, it ends up having more consonant clusters than other Romance languages. Here's a Portuguese example.
desprezar,
This means to despise.
Expressar.
This is a consonant
Expressar.
cluster with four
Expressar. Expressar. Yeah, I can actually see why, because that's a thing that also they do it in the Polish language, right? I don't speak Polish, but I'm getting interested in that language. Someday I might start learning it. I feel like the only difference is that they won't have the vowel. They have a combination of consonants that make it look like they don't have vowels in their language, but they still pronounce it. It could be like the transliteration of the word. That's pretty cool. I had no idea.
consonants, which results from
I mean,
the drop.
I know this, but I never really like stay there and think about it. So this is so cool.
Of the E vowel, eh.
desprezar,
Four consonants is an
Expressar.
extreme example, and three is more common. And here's a
Oh, okay. So, wait, let me try. So this is spiersk, spiersk. Oh my god, no, I can't.
Russian example.
Всплеск.
This means
Spiersk. Oh, okay, kinda.
splash. This cluster also has four consonants.
Всплеск.
In addition to the vowel reduction, the stress timing results in a similar rhythm, a similar cadence. In contrast with stress-timed languages, there are also syllable-timed languages. In syllable-timed languages, each syllable lasts for a more or less equal duration of time. Other Romance languages are much more syllable-timed than Portuguese, which gives it its different cadence and its vowel reduction. It's interesting to note that Brazilian Portuguese, which has weaker stress timing than European Portuguese, is often said to sound more like Spanish than European Portuguese does. But there are lots of stress-timed languages, including English, and I don't hear anybody saying that Portuguese sounds like English, so there must be more to it than that. Sibilance. One feature of Russian is that sibilant sounds are quite prominent.
Okay, so that's pretty much what I said in the intro, right? But he's explaining it in a more professional way. I was like, so yeah, definitely I needed to watch this video.
Sibilants are consonants that have a hissing or hushing sound, as in the English sibilants s, z, sh, ch, j, zh. Russian features these sibilants sa, za,
Ча.
Ша, ща.
Жа.
and
I
Portuguese
never really understood too much the difference between this and this. Oh my god, it's so difficult.
features these four sa, za, sha, ja. Portuguese contains frequent sibilants and specifically has an abundance of palatoalveolar sibilants, sh, which is voiceless, and j, which is voiced. Orthographic s and z are rendered as sh and j in some contexts. Before a voiceless consonant or before a pause, sibilants are pronounced sh. For example,
cidades,
meaning cities,
Cidades.
alegres,
meaning happy in the
Alegres.
plural form.
faz três,
This
Faz
means
três.
makes three.
eles,
This means they. In this example, the S becomes sh at the end of the word, and also notice that the reduced vowel, a fully dropped vowel actually, results in a consonant cluster ending in sh. Before a voiced consonant, j. For example,
felizmente,
meaning fortunately. It's also worth noting that the letter J and also G, when it's pronounced as a soft G, are also pronounced j. These two Russian sibilants,
Ша,
and
ща.
have similar sounds to Portuguese sha, and this Russian sibilant
Жа.
is similar to Portuguese ja. They're not exactly the same. The Portuguese ones are postalveolar sibilants, while these Russian ones are retroflex sibilants with a slightly different place of articulation. And this one here is an alveolo-palatal sibilant. This sound is also slightly different from the Portuguese one, but it sounds somewhat similar, at least to people who don't use that sound natively. A moment ago, we saw a type of consonant assimilation in Portuguese that makes the sibilant either voiced or voiceless depending on what follows.
I'm actually thinking what language would sound like Italian if there is any. And then when I listen to it, I won't be able to understand anything. I don't think there is any language like that. I think maybe some dialect, actually like Catalan from Spain, from the Catalonia region, sounds a lot like my dialect from Italy. I come from Piedmont in the north. like near Torino, near Turin. And it sounds a lot like when my father speaks to me in the dialect. It sounds really so much. Oh my god, especially the accent. So, but Italian, I don't really know. I have to think about it actually. It's an
In
interesting
Russian,
topic.
there's a similar type of assimilation for most consonants. Voiced consonants are pronounced as voiceless at the end of a word or before another voiceless consonant, and voiceless consonants are pronounced as voiced before a voiced consonant. For example,
Муж.
in this word,
жа,
becomes voiceless and is pronounced as.
ша,
Водка.
In this word, d becomes voiceless and is pronounced
Dimitri.
as t.
Dimitri, где моя водка?
Вокзал.
In this word, k becomes voiced and is pronounced as g. So the frequent voiceless sibilant sh at the end of words in Portuguese, as well as the assimilation of sibilants to the following consonant, making them either voiceless sh or voiced j, might unconsciously remind us of the similar but more generalized pattern in Russian. That same pattern is also a feature of Polish and most other Slavic languages, with Ukrainian being a notable exception. Palatalized consonants. One prominent feature of Russian is a distinction between hard consonants and soft consonants, which are palatalized. They sound somewhat like a consonant with a y sound immediately following. Portuguese features two palatal consonants. The characters nh represent
ня,
a palatal nasal. For example,
Tenho.
which we saw
Thank you.
before. A similar sound appears in Russian as one of the soft consonants. For example,
Устранять.
meaning eliminate. And in Portuguese, the letters LH stand for
Ля.
a palatal lateral
Coelho.
approximant. For example,
Trabalho.
Trabalho.
again, there's a
Trabalho.
soft consonant in Russian that sounds similar. For example,
Воля.
these two palatal consonants alone are not enough to make Portuguese sound Slavic. After all, these sounds do appear in some other Romance languages too. But together with the other elements, this is one thing that contributes to the overall Slavic sound of Portuguese. The dark L.
Actually, we have those in Italian too, but it's like GL, GL and GN.
Another phonetic feature that sounds Slavic is the velarized L of European Portuguese. This is like l, the dark L sound at the end of the word feel, l. The standard L sound in Russian is also a dark L like this. Here's a Portuguese example,
Alto.
meaning
Alto.
high,
Natal.
meaning Christmas. And a Russian example,
I never noticed actually. Alto, 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 alto. Natal. Never noticed that.
Плыть.
meaning to swim,
Wow.
meaning bow or onion. Nasal vowels and diphthongs. I mentioned before that some people think that Portuguese sounds like Polish, another Slavic language, and all of the features that I mentioned about Russian also apply to Polish. But Polish has one other feature in common with Portuguese that Russian does not: nasal vowels. In Old Slavonic there were nasal vowels, but in modern Slavic languages they have merged with oral vowels, except for in Polish. In Portuguese, there are a number of nasal vowels and nasal diphthongs, and in Polish, there are two nasal vowels. This letter is pronounced,
On.
which sounds close to the Portuguese nasal diphthong, and there's one more.
N.
This is the nasal E sound. Because Polish nasal vowels consist of an oral vowel followed by a nasal semivowel, they sound somewhat like nasal diphthongs, of which Portuguese has several. Here's a Polish example,
Wąż.
meaning snake. And here's a Portuguese example with a similar nasal vowel.
Cão.
Here's another Polish example,
Węże.
meaning snakes. And here's a Portuguese example.
Entre.
So, even though Portuguese is not closely related to Russian, Polish, or any other Slavic language, they just belong to language families within the wider Indo-European language family, and that's their only connection, they do share a number of phonological features that make them sound superficially similar to the untrained ear, especially from a distance or when you're not paying attention to what's being said. It's not really a big deal in the grand scheme of things, but it raises an interesting question. What are those features that stand out to us and make us think that they sound similar, largely on an
This is
unconscious
so
level?
interesting.
The question of the day, to speakers of Portuguese.
Okay, we need to check out also this video, Galician versus Portuguese. I've been listening to to a podcast saying about the history of Galicia, why Galicia is not part of Portugal. And that was really interesting, I gotta say. So definitely want to check out that video as well.
And to speakers of Russian, Polish, and other Slavic languages, have you ever had the impression that Portuguese sounds Slavic? What sounds or features might have given you that impression? And to other people, does Portuguese sound Russian to you, or sound Slavic to you? You
Not
may not
really.
consciously know what Russian or Slavic sounds like, but you probably associate them with certain sounds unconsciously. Leave your responses in the comments down below. Be sure to follow LangFocus on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And once again, thank you to all of my amazing Patreon supporters.
Okay, I'm gonna leave you a link in the description for the channel of LangFocus. This video was really... wow. It was really cool. Oh my god. Because you always hear this, like, why does Portuguese sound like Russian? And nobody's gonna really give you any, you know, any explanation. So this was very exhaustive. Wow, I really enjoyed watching this video. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section, and also let me know what should I check out next. Take care.